Gather round the campfire, friends. I've got a chilling tale for you tonight, straight out of the Alaskan wilderness. A tale of a shy small-town baker who had a secret hobby that'll send shivers down your spine. Our story opens late one June night in 1983 when a 17-year-old girl named Cindy Paulson escapes from a nightmare encounter. Cindy, who had gotten wrapped up in some unfortunate circumstances as a teen runaway, was working the streets that night when a shy, stuttering John picks her up for a paid date. She agrees to continue their rendezvous in a nearby parking lot, but things take a terrifying turn when the man whips out a gun and handcuffs Cindy in his car before driving her to a strange blue house on the edge of town. Once inside, her kidnapper drags Cindy down to a basement straight out of a serial killer nightmare. All hunting trophies, furs, and weapons adorning the walls. He chains her to a post and assaults her for hours. When the attack finally ends, her tormentor makes an ominous offer. Mount to my cabin before I let you go. He leads her to a small airplane outside. Cindy knows in her gut, if she sets foot in that cabin or the airplane her assailant says they need to take to reach it, she'll never make it home alive. So when he turns his back to ready the plane, Cindy seizes the moment and sprints toward the highway, frantically waving down help. By some miracle, she flags down a truck and, still handcuffed and hysterical, begs the driver to hurry her to safety. She recounts her whole petrifying encounter to the police in detail. What her attacker looked like, the vehicle he drove, his stutter, even down to the candy wrappers on his car floor. Detectives are soon able to ID the plane used to nearly abduct Cindy, connect it back to a local biz owner named Robert Hansen, and, wouldn't you know, Hansen perfectly matches Cindy's description, right down to those crooked front teeth of his. But when they bring him in for questioning, he has an airtight alibi for that night, backed up by two friends. Here's what those investigators don't yet realize. Hansen is not merely the mild-mannered small-town baker he appears to be. Behind closed doors, he leads a sinister double life, prowling Anchorage for victims among its most vulnerable citizens, troubled teens, runaways, and sex workers that nobody would miss. The early 80s was the height of an oil rush transforming Alaska, drawing thousands seeking quick cash and a fresh start. For some young women, that meant dancing in strip clubs or turning tricks to get by. Cindy was among the many who slipped through society's cracks. While questioning Hansen about Cindy's allegations, detectives uncover faint clues hinting at his hidden predator side. See, he's known around town by the nickname Bad Bob the Baker, thanks to a rap sheet including arson, theft, and even a prior attempted kidnapping charge. And here's another stomach-churning fact. Cindy wasn't Hansen's first victim, nor even the first to escape his clutches and report him. Over the years, multiple women and girls claimed Bad Bob kidnapped and raped them at gunpoint, only to have their allegations dismissed without serious investigation. Why weren't cops taking action against him? In those days, people figured girls living on the margins were bound to face violence. If dancers went missing, well, perhaps they merely slipped away with a new job or man. No use worrying unless a body turned up. But Cindy's courageous testimony convinced one cop, a detective named Glenn Flota, that finally they have enough evidence to pursue charges against Hansen. He tries first to get the DA's green light to search Hansen's property for evidence he might be a serial offender. But despite Flota's strong hunch Bad Bob could be responsible for more missing and murdered women, the DA shoots him down. Out of options, Flota calls in the big guns of the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit. He taps serial killer profilers John Douglas and Robert Ressler to build a profile based strictly on his missing persons cases and crime scenes, no other info. The FBI profilers work their magic, and Detective Flota is floored when they nail the profile right down to predicting a stuttering middle-aged white male who keeps trophies of his crimes. Armed with those pro tips, Flota finally wins approval to search Hansen's house. what they discover makes his blood run cold. Hidden weapons matching ballistics from murder scenes, women's jewelry, a map covered in ominous markings pinpointing grave sites, and multiple other mementos providing enough hard evidence to charge Bad Bob Hansen with assaults against Cindy Paulson and link him to a cold case killing spree that had gone undetected for over a decade. Here's just a taste of what this beast was up to all that time. He admitted prowling for targets among vulnerable girls and sex workers nobody would miss when they disappeared forever. After strong-arming them into his vehicle, Hansen would fly his victims out to remote wilderness cabins stocked with supplies, where he imprisoned and hideously tortured them for extended periods, assaulting the women repeatedly. When they attempted escape into the inhospitable Alaskan brush, Hansen turned hunter, gleefully tracking and gunning down his prey in his personal twisted blood sport. Investigators have linked Hansen to at least 17 murders and 30 rapes, though they believe his body count could number 30 or more. How did this killer hide in plain sight so long? Well, Hansen was a master deception artist. On the surface, he cultivated his public persona as an upstanding family man and business owner, being the town's main baker. Nobody suspected what Bad Bob was capable of. Behind the scenes, though, this guy checked all the classic serial killer predator boxes. History of rejection and volatile behavior, especially toward women, above average intelligence paired with serious antisocial tendencies, and an arrogant belief he was too cunning to get caught, no matter how sloppy. It took 12 long years of attacks before Hansen finally tripped himself up, abducting the brave Cindy Paulson. Her courage to come forward and sit for painful interviews, plus Detective Flotha's persistence joining the dots of Hansen's cold cases, forced officials to finally pull their heads out of their ass and see Bob for what he really was. In the end, Hansen copped a plea deal, admitting guilt for just 4 murders, though evidence potentially links him to dozens more. And despite confessing fully, this manipulator attempted to minimize his responsibility right to the bitter end. During interrogations, he pinned blame on victims themselves, claiming attacks were always consensual trysts gone wrong. He portrayed himself as the wounded party being opportunistically framed by money-grabbing girls. Bob the Butcher Baker of Alaska slithered his way into minimal punishment despite committing some of the most depraved, cold-blooded crimes imaginable. He got just 20 years for each of 4 confirmed homicides, tacked onto a 461-year sentence, rendered fairly meaningless when you're already past middle age. Hansen died in prison 20 years later, evading full accountability as the Iceman Killer, who hunted Alaska's daughters for sport.